Allow me to introduce you to our next speaker, who it is a great honor to have with us today, as he is a great catalyst for both audiences and minds. Rabbi David Levin-Kruss, who has prepared a most stimulating session for us, how not to create a Jewish family, some lessons from the Genesis. David Levin-Kruss, or also known as DLK, is a Jewish expert educator based in Jerusalem. He believes that Jewish texts and tradition are the technology we use to make the world a better place. David's professional journey includes serving as director of Jewish education for JDC Europe, faculty and director of special programs at the Pardes Institute, overseas director of the Melitz Centers for Jewish Zionist Education, and community director and family educator at the Stanmore and Canons Park Synagogue in London. David is passionate about the interplay between text and life, and is the founder of My Open Book, an institute and methodology that combines Jewish and journal texts with life coaching techniques to achieve personal breakthroughs. DLK holds a BA on the teacher certification in English literature and Jewish thought from the Hebrew University. He served in the IDF's spokesperson unit and received rabbinical ordination from the Joseph and Gwendolyn Strauss Rabbinical Seminary. He's also a graduate on the Jerusalem Coaching Institute. Kevod Arav, thank you very much for being here with us today. It's truly an honor. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Federico, and very happy to be here today. Federico actually changed the title a little bit. It's How Not to Create a Jewish Family, Bad Lessons from Genesis, because if we look at Genesis, you'll see that there are plenty bad lessons to be learned from the behavior of the different people here. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at what can we learn from the book about Genesis, about how not to create a Jewish family, and on a corollary, how yes to create a Jewish family. Just to speak about it from a technical viewpoint, I'll be speaking for about half an hour. If people have questions or comments or anything like that, please put it into the chat. But Federico, if I can ask you to check the chat and to interrupt me if there's anything burning, like if it's a question, we can discuss it at the end. But if it's something that isn't clear, or I'm speaking too quickly or something like that, then please tell me, please interrupt me, and at the end we'll take questions and make suggestions. It's I'm very happy to be doing this today, not only because I love to work together with you, but I became a grandfather last week, and the Brit was this week, so family and things like that are very much in my mind at the moment. It was interesting. Also, one last thing, and then I'll launch forth. It was interesting to. I just clicked on. The timing is, I think we're running a little late, so I clicked on, and I heard the last moments of discussion about your poster. First of all, just by chance, I chose this backdrop, and I realized now it fits in very well the poster. But I heard the different disagreements and the argument, and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is the perfect start for my class, because it sounds like a real good family, arguing about something, disagreeing about something, everybody giving firm opinions." So it just felt like a very good start to what we're discussing. The whole issue, and I think this has to be taken account of when one's creating practical programs, the whole issue of saying that people in the Bible behave badly, the heroes, the fathers, the mothers, has a wide range of attitudes. There are people who believe it's totally prohibited, it's totally forbidden, and who will work their way to try and explain that everything we see in the Bible that may seem immoral or incorrect is somehow justified. You have the other extreme of people who enjoy shocking people. You know, that professor on the first day of university who gets a lot of fun shocking all the students. I hope I'm not going to do that today. And finally, we have the approach that I have, which is, I believe the stories with their difficulties were preserved for a reason. And so we're going to look at the book of Genesis and look at different mistakes or different lessons that people learned and see what we can learn about that in terms of our own families. And the first character we're going to look at is not Abraham sacrificing Isaac or nearly sacrificing Isaac. It's not Adam and Eve. It's not Cain and Abel or Esau and Jacob. It's actually God, God's self. It's actually God, God's self. And we're going to look at what did God learn in the book of Genesis, and how can that help us understand families. So Rabbi Jonathan Sacks points out something very, very interesting, and that is a lot of books begin with the particular. It might begin with a particular family or a particular group and works its way outwards. The Bible does something very, very similar, very, very different. The very, very first chapter of the Bible is the creation of the world. You couldn't get more universalistic than that. And then we read about Noah, then we read the Tower of Babel. Finally, we read about Abraham. What is going on? What is going on? In the beginning, God wants to have a relationship with all the world. God wants to be a universal God who wants a relationship with all the world. But it doesn't work. God makes a flood, starts again, it doesn't work. God makes the Tower of Babel, destroys, people make the Tower of Babel, God destroys it, it doesn't work. Eventually, God finds Abraham and realizes that God needs to have a relationship with lots of different families. It's too much to have a relationship with the entire world. And we have it in our own lives today. There are certain things that only a country can do. We need sometimes big organizations. Only a country can create a national health system. Only a country can protect its citizens. But there are things that a country is too big to do and things that an individual is too small to do. We can't do it on our own. And that is where family and community come in. Family and community are able to provide the warmth, the support, the sense of belongingness, the sense of rootedness that a country is too big to do and an individual is too weak to do. And so, in fact, in many, many ways, the entire book of Genesis is about the family and how the family is the bedrock of society. We'll speak at the end how this has been very, very strongly challenged in the past few hundred years, actually, and see whether perhaps a new definition, a new understanding of what a family is can be formed. So let's go and learn from some of these people's mistakes. They say a good person, a wise person, learns from their own mistakes. An absolutely brilliant person learns from other people's mistakes. So let's learn from some other people's mistakes. And let's start off with a mistake I once made at Ben Gurion Airport. So I was at the airport waiting to go through security, put my bags through, and suddenly it starts beeping like absolute crazy. And the people in charge of security start getting very, very nervous. And I started getting very nervous. And they pulled me aside and they said, "Sir, you have 4 knives, big sharp knives in your bag." And I looked at them in absolute shock. I don't know what happened. Well, I did know what happened. As I left the house, somebody came to me. Somebody came and said, "Can you please take this to my children?" And I said, of course. And I gave them to my wife, and she put them in my bag. And I went to the airport, never thinking that they contained 4 very sharp knives. Anyway, I was pulled aside. They started interviewing me. And I said probably the worst thing I could do, which was technically right, but not really true. I said, I'm sorry. I said, my wife packed my bags. Well, it wasn't quite true. Technically, she did pack the bag, but yes, it was still my job to check whether there were knives in it or not. And the Bible starts in the same way. Adam defends himself to God, no less, for eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil by blaming his wife. And we have many, many examples in Genesis of couples not behaving in the same way. I was just helping my younger son, for his exams, learning about the story of how Rebecca helped Jacob to trick her husband, Isaac. And I'm just looking at this and saying, like, is this a story I should be teaching mine was not so young, a child, is this the way to behave? But we can flip it. And we can say a few things. First of all, in order to have a strong family, the people who are leading the family need to behave to each other with loyalty, even if it had been my wife's fault. I had a certain obligation to be loyal to her. And second, with integrity. One cannot lie to each other. And before one can even begin to speak about the larger family, the parents, in some cases it might be only one person, have to behave with loyalty and integrity to each other. And if it's with one person, perhaps even more difficult, to themselves, to be honest and true to oneself. So I'd say a first building block for creating a powerful family is for the core of the family, the people who start the family, to behave with loyalty and integrity. That's the first story I want to look at. The second story I want to look at is the story of Abraham near sacrificing Isaac. I want to share a very anti-war poem. I've really been debating beforehand, just in the little time I was here, whether to share it or not. I'm not using it to make a comment on. I've really been debating whether to share it or not. I'm not making a comment on the current war. I want to make another. I want to make another comment with it. I hope you will believe me when I say this, but that I'm using it for this. So Federico, could we just put the first page up that I gave you? This is a very anti-war poem written about the First World War by Wilfred Owen. I'm going to read it in the original version, but I have put some of the words, the hard words, I put in brackets. I think it makes a very, very powerful poem. The parable of the old man and the young. So Abram rose and clave the wood, and went and took the fire with him and a knife. And as they sojourned, both of them together, Isaac, the firstborn, spoke and said, My father, behold the preparations, fire and iron, but where the lamb for this burnt offering? Then Abram bound the youth with belts and straps, and builded parapets and trenches there, and stretched forth the knife to slay his son. When lo, an angel called him out of heaven, saying, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do anything to him. Behold, a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. Offer the ram of pride instead of him. But the old man would not so, but slew his son and half the seed of Europe, one by one. Federica, you can take it off. There is a constant tension about culture within a family. On the one hand, we have values, we have culture. I don't know who he is. There are families that I have culture, values. I want to see my children grow up in a certain way. I want them to have certain ways of looking at the world, of acting in the world. But sometimes the children become extensions of myself rather than really being who they are or who want to be. Sometimes I can put my values of what I want them to do above their well-being. Now, this story, of course, is not what happened in the Bible. In the Bible, the ram, God stopped this slaughter from taking place. But it almost happened. It almost happened. And I think the story is a tremendous warning of what happens when we get so enslaved to what we believe that we put our child and our values before them and their values. And for the remainder of the time together, I want to look at how we have teased, how this can be teased out, how one can, on the one hand, give over to a next generation powerful values, practices, and ways of looking at the world, while at the same time helping and accepting them where they are. And for this, I want to tell you another story. The story is about an Arab-Israeli group of women who decided to meet together regularly. And the first week that they had it, or the first month they had it, a Jewish woman was in charge, and she said, "How do you relate to prayer?" And all the Jewish women said, "It's hard." These were observant women. "It's hard to pray. I don't pray every day. Jewish law doesn't require women to pray in the same way as it requires men to. I find it frustrating. Oh, I love it. It's really, really meaningful." But the Arab women started speaking. They all said, "I love prayer 5 times a day. I look forward to it. It's my special time." All just a chance to be alone. From which the Jewish women thought that the Arab women were not entering into this with a good spirit, and we're just lying, and we're just doing things to make themselves seem good. But nevertheless, they continued. The next time they met, an Arab woman was in charge, and she said to people, "Who is your favorite child?" And the Arab women said, "Oh, Hussein, Muhammad, Fatima." I had absolutely no problem saying who is their favorite child. When it came to the Jewish women, it's, "Oh, I love all my children equally. I don't have a favorite child. They're all exactly the same to me." From which the Arab women decided that the Jewish women were not just being very, very honest and were just saying things in order to make themselves look good. It was a basic cultural divide going on over there about what was acceptable to say in each culture. Favoritism as children is such a hard thing. Every single time I tell the story, when it comes to the question time of the session, people say to me, "So who is your favorite child?" Now, 2 of them are actually in the next room, probably half listening to what I'm saying. But in any case, I never, ever give an answer. But we can't pretend that it's often one child one gets on with more easily, or one child is more similar or more different from you, and therefore one has a greater attraction to them. And I think the trick, and the whole of the Bible for that is about favoring one over the other. God starts it off by favoring Abel's sacrifice, and therefore Cain kills Abel. Ishmael is evicted, and Isaac becomes the progenitor of the Jewish people. Esau and Jacob, Esau is kicked out, and Jacob becomes the character, and of course the most famous, Joseph and his brothers, where the sin of favoritism of the coat has very, very hard consequences. It's unclear why the Bible does it. Some people believe that it's because it's some type of a polemic against the first child getting everything and saying, no, it should be more fair. It's just always an enormous question to me. Why couldn't it have been Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Esau and Jacob, Joseph and his brothers? Why does this dichotomy have to be set up? Why is there almost an assumption that one child will be more loved, more central, more important than the others? In the 1800s, a German rabbi by the name of Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, the founder of Neo-Orthodoxy, he said something incredible about Esau and Jacob. I'm going to read the whole thing to you. This is written years before child-centered education, years before some of the ideas that I'm speaking about now became famous. Federico, can you put the second page up of what I gave? So I'll read the whole thing. He's talking about Esau and Jacob. He says, I just think every word here is incredible. As the boys were growing up, it became more and more clear how completely different they were in personality and way of life. Bring up the child according to their way is the important Jewish principle of education. It is true that the aims of Jewish education are the same for all children. The methods, however, must necessarily differ in accordance with the natural talents, inclinations, and general nature of the child. What is appropriate for and to the benefit of one child may be extremely harmful to another. Jacob and Esau just do not fit on one school bench. If Esau's parents had come early to the sad conclusion that their son was not at all inclined towards boring spiritual activities, that's not the type of person he was. He wasn't a learner. He wasn't somebody who could sit all day studying books. They might have succeeded in developing his good traits to such an extent that he could still have been called a worthy grandson of Abraham. You can take it down, Federico, please. There is an enormous tension between giving the values and telling children how to act it out. There's an enormous tension between sharing your values and sharing it in the same way. And what Hirsch is saying, which I think is so powerful, is that one needs to treat children equally, but not the same. I should have brought a graphic for it, where there are three people of different heights, but they're all given the same ladder. So one can't see, one sees, and one is too high. It's not a question of equally, but the same. And this, I think, is really the key if we're looking to families, to try and understand every kid is different, every member of the family is different. The kibbutz and just some of the Marxist movements, said from each according to his ability, to each according to their needs. We all have different abilities. We all have different needs. And there needs to be a gentle interplay between values and vision, and at the same time, an acceptance of each person of the family as they are and where they are, and that they are not extensions of ourselves. So as to the question of why the Bible preserves these stories, according to Dennis Prager, there are three reasons. One is because this is the true story, whether one believes it's literally true or because these are the stories of our people, but the truth is the truth. Secondly, to understand that even great people have problems. Very often you see things from the outside, or news has often been able to be curated, and we think that, great people don't have problems. But I think more than anything, to understand that family pain and tragedy are the human norm, not the exception. The nature of family is that it's difficult. The nature of family is that things often don't work. When we use this as being our basic understanding, then things are much better than expecting everything to be perfect. So for these three reasons, I think the Bible chose to include difficult stories, because they were what happened, to show that even great people have problems, and to understand that challenge and pain are part of life and need to be dealt with rather than seen as some failure in some time. For the last few hundred years, the family has been challenged, whether it's industrialization, whether it's Freud, who saw the family as being the basis of all neurosis, Marx, who saw it as stopping the revolution of the proletariat, whether it be demands of modern life, new roles for different genders, diverse family structures, marriages in and out of the faith. No longer is compulsory heterosexual marriage, all three words, what everybody aims to, compulsory or heterosexual or marriage. And I think we're seeing a new definition of family. I always call it the chosen family for the chosen people, that many, many Jews and other people in the world choose their families. It may be two groups that join together. It may close-knit communities. It may be looking towards the Jewish people. But it's interesting again that that I came in on the debate about the poster, because family can mean so many different things. I do see Uri's hand, but we're going to be at questions in 2 minutes, so you'll be able to put your question or challenge then. I just want to throw out two examples of programming, which I think, or three, I'll give you three actually, three examples of programming that I think could be very, very helpful, bearing in mind that all the different politics about treating people in the Bible as normal people. One is some type of a improv or psychodrama where one puts the characters in the Bible into family therapy of some kind and sees what would happen. That would happen. A similar thing can be taking these characters and turning into a game. What would you do at this point, using the basic stories and doing it as a game that one can go through? And a third thing, which I emphasized, is I spoke vaguely about values and how every family has values that it wishes to pass on, or perhaps should have values it wishes to pass on. A third could be to get people to define their family values, write them out, turn them into a Declaration of Independence or something like that to show what their values are. That is what I have to share. Very, very happy to take questions, hear challenges, hear what people have to say. Thank you for listening. The floor is now yours.